My fiancé's cousin is actually his secret girlfriend. Hello. Welcome, and thank you for 55,000 subscribers. Unbelievable. And I thought, why not? 55 seems like a good number for a new shirt. Yeah? What do you think? What do you think? But anyway, let's get into it. Just bear with me. I can summarize the situation with 3 facts. My mom keeps texting me the praying hands emoji. My dad has not said anything since Saturday, which, if you knew my dad, you would understand is somehow the highest form of commiseration he could offer. And I ripped a pillow in half yesterday. Okay, so my name is Annie, 24, female, and until last week I was engaged to a man named Henry, 30, male, who is British, or as he would say, proper English. I met him 2 years ago when he was doing some work that brought him to Wichita, of all places, and we have been long distance ever since, with the plan being that he moves here after the wedding. To all of my British viewers, I am sorry in advance, but there's so many people in this story speaking with one of y'all's accents, I gotta give it a shot. All right? And you can tear me to shreds after. But you've been warned. But Henry is, or I mean, he was? Okay, this is the thing. Henry is genuinely one of the most beautiful human beings I've ever seen in person. Like the kind of face that makes you do a double take in a Walmart parking lot, even though he has never set foot in a Walmart in his entire life and said, "Good Lord," under his breath the first time you took him to one. He dresses like he's going to a board meeting even when he's just going to get gas. He has this voice, the accent. Okay, I need to move on. The plan was that his family would fly over and spend 6 days at our place, which is this very big spread outside of Hutchinson that my parents have had for like 30 years. We call it the farm, but we've just got 2 alpacas named Tobias and Veronica and like 15 chickens. I mean, doesn't that count as a farm? I mean, at what level of chickens does it become a farm and stop being a hobby farm? Like, what is the limit on the amount of animals that we would consider a hobby farm versus a farm? It's just a lot of flat land, so it's more just a vibe. My parents love it, and it's home, and I wanted Henry's family to see and experience where I really come from. His family is his mother, Pauline, his father, Roger, and coming over this time were his 2 cousins, Charlotte, 27, female, and Oliver, 21, male. I want to be real clear here before I keep going on. My parents are very good people. My mom, Debbie, made 4 different types of casseroles before they got here because she wasn't sure what British people ate, and she was worried they might think American food was too heavy. Sunday dinner in the UK, it's extremely heavy, right? Is it not like the heaviest possible thing that you could have? And like a full English breakfast is, I mean, it's like 10 tons, right? It's delicious. She also made a fruit salad and bought a tin of those fancy schmancy imported shortbread cookies from the Hy-Vee and arranged them on an old plate that was actually just a decoration. My dad, Greg, pressure washed the driveway. He also pressure washed the chicken coop. The 2 of them were ready. They were so ready. They'd been ready for 3 whole months. The British folks arrived. They need a theme song, don't they? Like some kind of British song. They were not exactly dressed for the country. Not leastwise Kansas, if I'm honest. I mean, they certainly looked the part. Pauline stepped off, Dad says, alighted from the rental van, wearing these huge sunglasses, even though it was overcast, and the first thing she said, before even hello, was to tell Henry that his trousers were crushed. It is a real thing. Pants can be crushed. Trousers are pants. I mean, you all knew that, but you can iron pants. I believe that's what she's referring to. I still don't understand what that even is. Henry kind of did this little laugh and straightened up and said, "Now, Mother," and she said, "Yes, dear," and then turned to my mom with a smile like a lizard gives and said, "Oh, hello, you must be Debbie. Oh, and what a charming place." Roger said hello, shook my dad's hand, and then stood slightly behind Pauline's left shoulder for basically the rest of the trip and occasionally said things like, "Quite right," and "Indeed," and "Shall we?" at appropriate intervals. And then there was Charlotte. Charlotte is one of a kind. I mean, I've never met another human being like her. Her face is so severe, but at the same time, so beautiful in this terrifying sort of way. She's got dark hair and this sharp bone structure and this way of holding herself that looks great in photos, but in person makes you feel like nothing has ever or could ever impress her especially you." She shook my hand, I remember this so well, with only one finger and one thumb, and said, "Oh, little Annie, Henry's told us so much about you. You're the image of what I pictured." It could have been a compliment, or it could have been a clinical observation. I think it was a clinical observation. And Henry was right there, and he smiled and touched my shoulder, and I chose to believe it was a compliment because I was in a good mood, and also because Henry was smiling and I trusted him. Oliver was something else entirely. Oliver looks permanently 14. He's tall and foalish and has this floppy kind of hair, and the bearing of a golden retriever who has just knocked something off a shelf but can't quite stop wagging. Oliver pumped my dad's hand so enthusiastically that Dad's whole arm went up and down with it and said, "Mr. Stoke, just brilliant, truly. Actually, I've been reading about Kansas. The Wizard of Oz was set here, did you know? Well, obviously, you do know. You live here. Sorry. Right chuffed." My dad was flabbergasted but managed a, "Yep, that's right." First 2 days were fine, at least sort of. There were some moments. Pauline called the kitchen marvelously cozy, but I knew exactly what she meant. She declined the green bean casserole my mom made specifically because she'd read somewhere that British people liked green beans after Mom said it had Pringles mixed in. Roger had seconds, but then he looked sheepishly at his wife. Henry complimented everything sincerely and helped with dishes without being asked, which I love about him, which makes everything worse now looking back. Charlotte ate like a bird and spent most of dinner asking Henry questions about places they'd apparently both been at the same time. Like, "Do you remember that place in Marlow, Henry? The one by the Wear? Oh, that was such a summer." And Henry would smile and say yes, and they would sit there, and we didn't know what a Wear was, but chalked the stuff up to them knowing each other their whole lives. Oliver tried grits the next morning. My mom made a full Southern breakfast spread. She wanted to represent a really American experience, I guess, and there were grits and biscuits with gravy and eggs and the whole shebang. Oliver just poked at the grits for a while and said, "Right, what's the protocol with these?" And my dad was like, "You eat 'em." And Oliver said, "With a spoon?" And my dad was like, "However you want." And Oliver tried a fork and then just went with the spoon and said, "These are genuinely wonderful. It's like a savory porridge." And my dad actually belly laughed at that. Charlotte wouldn't eat the grits. Also, it is hot in Kansas in the summer. The heat hits you just like you've opened an oven door, and Kansas doesn't really do shade. Kansas is flat, and the sky is everywhere, and the sun basically has nothing to hide behind out here. Henry had been warned and was fine. He sweats elegantly. Can you sweat elegantly? I suppose I cannot. Which sounds like I made it up, but I did not. You made it up. He would be visibly roasting and still look like a magazine ad. Pauline wore what I can only describe as resort linen every day and complained about the heat with this tight little smile like it was our fault. Roger perspired heavily but said nothing about it. Charlotte had brought an actual parasol, like an umbrella for the sun. I learned the word from her. I literally thought it was a sumbrella, which Oliver thought was funny and she turned her nose up at. I will admit, I have used a parasol before. For the purpose of blocking out the sun. Not on the beach, walking down the road in blazing sunlight, 100-degree weather, with a plaid umbrella above me. But it worked. She carried this thing around the property. When Tobias the alpaca got curious about it, she was actually so nice to him. I think that was the only thing I remember her doing that was genuine, patting the alpaca on the head and saying something to him I didn't catch. This is not meant as a redeeming factoid. Oliver got very sunburned on day 1, and my mom gave him some aloe vera, and he said, "Oh, cracking! Debbie, you're a living saint." And my mom laughed and said, "Oh, stop." He bought a Jayhawks cap at the gas station. Later that day, when they didn't know I could see them, I saw Pauline literally rip it off his head and smack his shoulder with it. She must have kept it from him because I didn't see it again. And this is where I start piecing things together in retrospect, because at the time I was just living it, and oh boy, does the context sure change things. The things that seemed normal at the time. Charlotte and Henry finishing each other's sentences a lot. Charlotte touching his arm when she was making a point. The two of them standing close together at the fence watching Tobias and Veronica while Oliver and I were over by the chicken coop, and Oliver was asking me very earnest questions about whether chickens had distinct personalities. They do, honestly. Margot is a menace. Charlotte sometimes looked at me and then at Henry with this expression that I now get was nonverbal communication between them that I wasn't a part of. The way Henry got a little stiff every time Charlotte and I were in direct conversation together, I thought he was stressed out about the visit going well. I thought it was normal, since that is what a reasonable person thinks when their fiancé seems tense during a big family milestone. Fair enough, right? You would be a little bit tense, especially like staying in the same house for 6 days, right? Would you do that? If you were in this position, would you have your entire family stay together with their entire family for 6 days? I mean, I could get like 2 days or a day or something. Oliver was tense too, but in a completely different way. Oliver's tension read as general catastrophe-adjacent clumsiness. He elbowed over a pitcher of sweet tea on day 3 and said, "With my own elbow! Oh, so sorry, Debbie." And my mom said it was fine and mopped it up, and he helped her. They had a whole conversation about whether tea was better hot or cold, and he came away having reconsidered his entire position on iced tea, which he had previously considered a cardinal sin. Do the English consider iced tea a cardinal sin? I've not heard this before. But there were moments when he'd catch himself staring at me and then look away so fast, or he'd start to say something and then trail off, or he'd laugh too hard at something I said in this slightly desperate way, like he was trying to make me feel better about myself. At the time, I thought he was just an anxious guy trying hard on a trip where the social stakes were really high. He really is an anxious person. That was accurate. The stakes part was also accurate, just not for the reason I thought. So now we come to the county fair. My parents take the county fair very seriously. My mom enters her preserves every year and has won the ribbon for strawberry jam 3 years running, and she defends that title viciously. My dad volunteers at the livestock judging. This thing is a big deal in our family. I wanted to share it with the Brits because it's genuinely fun and it's our thing, you know? So we all drove out on a Sunday. It was 99 degrees. Charlotte had the parasol. Pauline was wearing the monster sunglasses and a big hat with a scarf and looking like she was on safari in 1865. Roger bought a corn dog at the gate and ate it in 3 bites and said, with complete sincerity, "Extraordinary." Henry bought us both lemonade and held my hand, and it was nice. It was really nice, and I remember thinking, this is actually going all right. Oliver and my dad ended up walking together for a while because Charlotte and Pauline drifted to the craft tents, and Henry and I were doing the midway games, and my mom was off with her preserves. I don't know how Oliver ended up alone with both my parents for the conversation. I think my mom found them and it just kind of evolved, but this is what I've been able to piece together from 3 separate stories. Mom's and Dad's, and Oliver's own he gave me later while looking like he was facing a firing squad he'd scheduled himself. They were at the livestock pens looking at the goats. Oliver really likes goats, apparently. He said something to my dad about how the goats at the fair were so very personable, and my dad agreed that they were. And then Oliver started talking about how much he liked Kansas and how it was different from what he expected and how people were so direct here. Like you'd ask someone a question and they'd just answer it, no preamble, no qualifying, they'd just tell you the thing. He found it refreshing because where he came from, people sort of built up to the thing they meant to say through about 6 layers of implication, and you had to sort of interpret it. My mom said, "That sounds exhausting," and Oliver said it was, and then he went quiet for a minute. And then, according to my mom, he asked, "Debbie, may I ask you something and have you just answer it directly, straight away, just the way we've been describing?" And my dad said, "Shoot, son." Mom says here Oliver actually started shaking. And Oliver said, "If, under hypothetical circumstances, you found out that some individual had not been entirely forthcoming about something really quite important, forthcoming to or with someone you loved, and you were abreast of it, I mean, you knew of it, and you'd known of it for some time, but you hadn't said anything, partly because it wasn't your place, and partly because you convinced yourself it would resolve of its own. Would that make you a bad person, really, genuinely, or would it simply make you a person who had made a bad choice?" My dad, who is Greg, who is a man of approximately 40 words a day, said, "Those sound like the same thing to me." And Oliver apparently said he was right and that he was sorry. My dad said, "What for?" And then Oliver told them. He just caved. He stood there next to the goat pen at the Reno County Fair and explained that Charlotte was his sister, yes, but he and Charlotte were not actually related to Henry. Charlotte and Henry had been together, romantically together, on and off, for 5 or 6 years before Henry moved to the States for work. And the most recent on part of the on and off had continued after Henry moved here and met me, which meant the on part might have overlapped with Henry and me for a while. Actually, I don't know for sure about the overlap timeline. Oliver wasn't sure either and kept saying he didn't want to speculate, and apparently went on for about 10 minutes in this very convoluted way about what he knew directly versus what he'd inferred versus what Charlotte had told him versus what Henry had said in a phone call Oliver accidentally heard the edge of once. My mom described it as like watching someone try to defuse a bomb. And my dad said his mouth was like a fire hose with no hands on it. What Oliver did know for certain, Charlotte still had deep feelings for Henry. Charlotte had lobbied to come on this trip. Charlotte had told Oliver explicitly that she wanted to see how things stood between herself and Henry before Henry made any permanent decisions. Oliver had tried to talk her out of it and failed, and for his attempts to meddle, he got himself dragged into coming. Oliver had spent the entire trip watching Charlotte's interactions with me with this guilt consuming him from the inside, and the heat and the fair and the goats and my dad's blank stares had forced the truth out of him. So my mom came and found me. I was in the middle of trying to throw a ping pong ball into a fishbowl and failing, and Henry was chuckling, and I was actually having a great time. She pulled me aside and told me, very matter-of-factly. And I stood there for a second and looked over at where Henry was standing, still laughing, watching me, and I was reeling. I almost passed out. I could not figure out what the scene at the fair could or would even look like. There were just too many moving parts, so I just went quiet, and my mom stood next to me, and then my dad appeared, and the three of us stood there, and Henry walked over and said, "Everything all right, love?" And my dad looked at him for a long time and said, "Time to go." Henry wanted to stay. So soon? I should have shoved that fishbowl onto his head. We drove home. For some reason, I rode with the Brits. Charlotte was talking about the heat the whole ride and how she didn't understand how anyone could bear it, and Oliver sat in the back like an elf on the shelf. Pauline criticized Henry's driving. I was still in shock. I talked to Henry that night. We went outside by the fence where Tobias was being an alpaca in the half-dark, and I just said, "I need to know more about Charlotte. Tell me the truth." And he did. He actually told me. He didn't lie to my face when given the direct opportunity, but everything before that conversation is a different story, and we both know it. 6 years together, and they were still in regular contact. Her coming on this trip because she wanted to see, Henry saying he thought bringing her along would prove to himself that things were resolved on his end. That logic still drives me insane. No sense. Using my family's home and my parents and our actual life as a proving ground for whatever thing he hadn't worked out internally about his own past? Tobias snorted and spat at some point during this conversation and walked away. Mood. I asked him if he still had feelings for Charlotte, and he was quiet for a long time and said, "I don't know," which is the most devastating 3-word answer he could have given, and I think he knew it, and I think the fact that he said it anyway instead of lying was supposed to mean something. Charlotte came and found me the next morning. I was holed up in my room most of that day. I guess Pauline had apparently told her what had happened. I don't know how Pauline found out. Well, I'm guessing that Henry told his mother, don't you think? Probably. Charlotte knocked on my door and came in and sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Annie, I want to be honest with you." She was actually extremely managed and careful. She said things like, "It's complicated," and "feelings are rarely straightforward," and "I hope you can understand the position I was in." And at one point she said, "I don't think Henry is well suited to a life here, and it's not about you per se." That one I'm still turning over. Per se. I do not fully know what she meant, and I did not ask her to explain it because I was just done. I told her to get out of my room. She said, "Of course," the way you say it when you think you're being dignified, and she left. Oliver knocked on my door about 20 minutes later and invited me for a morning stroll, but I said no. Then he just said, "I'm sorry about Charlotte. She's always been like this, even when we were small. She sort of decides what she wants and expects others to fall in line." And I said, "I figured that out." Then he asked me if I knew where my dad was. My dad was in the barn doing something with a fence post. Oliver went and found him and helped him for about 3 hours without really talking, and my dad let him, and that was apparently that. Late on that last day, Henry came into the room and knelt by the bed. I was sitting there scrolling, and I put the phone down, and I couldn't look at him. He started talking about the future and how he was going to figure himself out, and I broke down. He tried to hold me, but I pushed him back. He knelt on the floor, and I took off my ring and handed it back to him. Then I said the only thing that I said in the whole conversation. "Go home, Henry." The Brits left. Pauline said her goodbyes in a way that made it clear she considered the whole situation to be something that had happened to her personally. Charlotte air-kissed somewhere near my cheek and said, "Take care of yourself, Annie." And I said, "I will." And that was the last thing we said to each other. Oliver gave me a real hug and teared up a little. He's such a sweet man. I hope he finds his way. Then, Henry. Henry stood by the rental van for a while, and we just looked at each other, and he said, "I'm sorry, Annie." And I believed him. I still do. That's the worst part, is I believe he's sorry. And he said, "I don't want to lose you." And I said, "You already have." And he didn't have an answer to that. We hugged, but I didn't let him kiss me. That was the hardest thing that's ever happened to me. There is one silver lining here, something that makes me smile, at least. When the van pulled away, Oliver was still standing in the driveway. He was on the phone. I could hear his half of the conversation, at least. "No, Charlie, I'm staying. Debbie said it was fine, and I'll find another flight in a couple of weeks. No, tell Mom I'm staying. I'll be fine." So I guess Charlie is Charlotte, I suppose. I love this man. He's great. He's great. He's just doing it, you know? I feel like Brits out there, you know, is that just a trope from movies and media and books and things that there's this particular type of English person who keeps everything so bottled up inside, and then all at once they just kind of break and they do something wild, like move to America or, you know, something. He's been sleeping in the guest room for 4 days. He helped my dad fix the fence. He tried to teach my mom a card game called cribbage, and she is actually getting good at it. He feeds the chickens. Margot hates him, but he's making progress with the others. A woman from my mom's church named Jolene, who is 22 and also single, came over for dinner on Tuesday because my mom just happened to invite her, because my mom is who she is, and Oliver and Jolene talked for about 3 hours after dinner about cattle farming versus sheep farming as agricultural models and whether the American Midwest and the English countryside were fundamentally the same place in different fonts, which was Oliver's phrasing, and Jolene called it the weirdest thing anyone's ever said to me that I also completely agree with. And they exchanged numbers, and he texted her before she'd even gotten to her car. The boy is love-struck. A heart full of love. I haven't spoken to Henry since he left. He texted twice. I read them both. I didn't answer. He told Oliver he was giving me space, which Oliver told me while we were in the kitchen, and I was making coffee, and I said, "Okay," and Oliver said, "For what it's worth, he's genuinely..." And I said, "I don't want to hear it right now, man." And he said, "Right," and poured himself some. I don't know what I'm doing. We haven't talked about what it all means legally or financially, and I can't think about that yet. I don't know if I'm an idiot or a person who got cheated out of something, or both. I don't know if Henry and Charlotte are going to end up together. I don't know anything right now. And that's all I've got. You are certainly not an idiot, my friend. Certainly not an idiot. I think the idiot here is Henry. Right? I don't think it. The idiot here is Henry. There's no thinking involved. This is a knowing kind of a thing. And Charlotte, too, to a lesser degree, right? I mean, she was kind of horrible, but I think her problem is that she just can't accept that Henry doesn't want her. Maybe she's not as amazing as she thinks she is. Perhaps, but I respect the parasol move. I mean, the sun is hot. But that being said, thank you for watching. I appreciate you being here with me. To the Brits and others out there, how did I do with the accents? I'd like to do more things with Brits in. And if you like this video, subscribe to the channel. Please support the channel if you like what's happening here. Have a lovely day, a lovely evening, a great, deep and restful sleep, if that's what's happening now. And whatever you're doing, just have a whale of a time.